For being here today. Senator Tillis.
Thank you all for being here today. Governor, I have hated the New England Patriots since the infamous snowplow game against my Miami Dolphins.
Ron Meyer,
in the 80s,
I remember. Yeah.
when I lived in Boston. But now I've found a way to actually have a warm place in my heart for at least one person associated with the Patriots.
We appreciate that.
And I guess in full disclosure, I don't bet. The only bets I make are with my brothers, and the payoff involves acts of public humiliation. So I'm so sorry for Ms. Levant what you're going through, but I'm glad that we're having the hearing today to talk about getting this right, because I think too many states are getting it wrong. I think of the 38 states that have legalized sports betting, 34 have prop betting, for example. Smaller
number than that. We've managed to, it's about 19 that still have it.
Still 19, good. So that's a good trend. But I'm going to get, and time allowed, to one suggestion I think we should have on a path forward. But I never miss an opportunity to bring up, well, first off, there's a lot of money involved here, and there's a lot of headwinds against this. And I'd like to give you an example of one of those players who I think supports and is making money off of prop betting and generally sports betting. That's the Eastern Band of the Cherokee. Now, how does that come up into this hearing? Well, I just happen to be spending a lot of quality time with the Eastern Band of the Cherokee debating why they're spending all this money that they're making off of gambling, trying to prevent a tribe that has been denied recognition for 130 years from getting recognition in the state of North Carolina. I'm not going to get into the details of this except for one William Pipeston, who's making millions of dollars in targeted lobbying, in this case, to try and defeat my efforts to get a tribe recognized after 130 years of patent bias, racism, and a number of other factors, using money that they're deriving from sports gambling to do that. And believe me, they're going to have an army of people raising millions of dollars to prevent us from trying to scope this down to a level to where we allow this legal market to exist, because, to Mr. Rebuck's point, it's going to exist. So government has to exist to make it as safe and as minimize the impacts as possible. I don't believe that you're going to find the Eastern Band of the Cherokee, who I believe are just this week announcing a new casino that they're going to be managing in Danville, Virginia, all excited about more prop betting, more revenue for them. You can take that down. I'm kind of curious about in some respects, I think in abstract, the sports betting issue and the marijuana legalization issue. First off, there seems to be a pretty substantial correlation between states who have legalized marijuana and states who are legalizing sports betting. The challenge that we have is we have a patchwork of laws now around the marijuana trade, and we have a patchwork of laws around the sports betting trade. And so it really raises the question of how can we get to a place where, when a market exists, and it has persisted for thousands and thousands of years, a gambling market, how do we make it safe? How do we address the negative consequences which will invariably occur? And how do we resource the various agencies to make sure that we can do that? And I, for one, think that in the same way that hopefully next year we'll have this discussion about marijuana, Mr. Rebuck, I disagree with you on the lack of need for federal guidelines. I do not want, as a matter of federal law, I would never vote as a matter of federal legislation to legalize gambling at the federal level, in the same way that I wouldn't for marijuana. But I would be very open to an independent commission that would be tasked by this body to spend a year putting together guardrails and a framework that makes sense, so that states who choose to have an affirmative vote and a law that is either signed by or overridden by, signed by a governor or overridden by a governor, that they have to conform to certain rules of the road. If we do that, the federal government's going to have to play a role. And what concerns me is if we don't, the American people don't know the difference between, with AI and with the sophistication of technology today, if we don't figure out some way to authenticate the sportsbook operations that are legitimate, to avoid international influences, all the other things that we have to look at. You only do that through federal supervision at some point. You have to have the resources available to do it. So I think we should start thinking ahead in the next Congress. I know you've been an effective chair, but I don't think you're going to get this solved before you pass the gavel over. And if I'm willing to bet on that, incidentally. But I think what we need to do is recognize that this is interstate commerce. If you're in a state that's not legalizing it, you're naive if you don't think they're gambling. In the same way, if you're in a state that doesn't have pot legal, then you're going to the eastern band of the Cherokee and buying pot that for some reason you can buy in western North Carolina. There's not a legal place you can transport it out of the eastern band of the Cherokee's boundary, for example. So maybe we need to start thinking about rules of the road. I'm kind of going on the pot angle, but on the gambling angle to get this right, or it's going to get worse, and the bad actors are going to exploit more. We're going to destroy a game that I'm fanatic over. We're going to destroy this game because of all the other pressures that are coming in and influencing the product. Thank you all for being here today.
Senator, may I briefly address your comment?
Yes, please.
Senator, I would agree with you that there absolutely needs to be a level of federal oversight. And I would respectfully suggest that's what Senator Blumenthal's bill, the Safe Bet Act, does. It sets minimum federal standards. States can regulate more if they like, but it sets minimum federal standards. And in so doing, would create the opportunity to solve Governor Baker's problem, which I agree with. Prop bets where we are literally taking young athletes who in May were at their senior prom and are on an athletic field in September, and people are betting on everything they do. Congress could, and the Safe Bet Act does it. Safe Bet Act eliminates college prop bets. It would be a minimum standard. Governor Baker is going to exhaust himself going state to state to state. However, he's right, and Congress could make that, as it is in the Safe Bet Act, one of the minimum federal standards. States could do more, they would retain control, but Congress would be able to speak. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Senator Padilla.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.